Hi, everybody. It's been a while since I recorded a video, and I apologize for that. My last video was for the Suicide Squad trailer. But today I wanted to do another entry in the Quintessential Movies series. The last one I did was The Terminator from 1984, and today I also want to do a film from 1984. It is A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original film written and directed by Wes Craven. And as you may know, Wes Craven has died at the age of 76. So that's sort of what prompted me to do a video on the film. Now, A Nightmare on Elm Street, it's the kind of film that has sort of been overshadowed by its legacy, by the numerous sequels and crossovers and remakes. Well, one remake, I guess they're going to do another one down the line now, another reboot. So that with a film like this, it's sometimes hard to just look at it as a film because we have in the back of our mind all this history, and it's sort of become more than a film. It became a franchise. It became a pop culture institution. Now, I haven't seen all of Wes Craven's films. I haven't seen Last House on the Left or The People Under the Stairs, or Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which I heard is, probably the best of the Nightmare films post this, along with Dream Warriors. But I feel Nightmare on Elm Street is arguably the definitive Wes Craven film, the sort of defining Wes Craven film, even if it's not technically, even if you could argue there are better films, or that, there are ones that you prefer, I think this may be the definitive Wes Craven film. And also, I would say I feel A Nightmare on Elm Street is the defining horror film of the 1980s. I feel like this film kind of looms over the rest. It looms over Friday the 13th. Hey, I would even say it kind of looms over The Evil Dead, as great as The Evil Dead is. And, I guess you could say The Shining may be the defining film. I guess you could argue, but in many ways that's more of a Kubrick film than even a horror film in some ways. But I guess I just mean that in terms of an 80s film, a film that feels like it was made in the 80s, a film that, it's a film that's A Nightmare on Elm Street. I won't say it's like horribly dated, but it does have an 80s film. I think it does epitomize sort of 80s horror, maybe better than any other film of that time. Even though there are other great horror films that came out during that time. So, what I think is great about Nightmare on Elm Street, as a horror film and as a film just in general, is its inventiveness. We're in an era now where a lot of times it feels like we're kind of doing the same thing over and over again. But Nightmare on Elm Street, not just for its time, but now, was an example of a director and a writer finding a new way to approach the genre and finding a new way to approach the whole slasher subgenre, because we had the original Halloween, we had Friday the 13th, we had Psycho. I think by this time we had a few Psycho movies. I think Psycho 2 had already come out. But what Wes Craven did was come up with this idea of a serial killer, of a slasher who could kill you in your dreams, in your most vulnerable state where you did not have control at all. He controlled the world. And Wes Craven was inspired by, I forget where it was, but by children dying in their sleep. Or I don't think it was children, but it was from people from Cambodia after the reign of Pol Pot. Yeah, so yeah, Craven was really fascinated by this idea of just dying in your sleep, not of heart failure, just dying. And that's sort of what gave birth to the idea of Freddy Krueger, who I think I would argue, is the most iconic slasher in film history, more so than Michael Myers or even Jason. I mean, Jason, Michael Myers are up there, but I think Freddy Krueger just kind of looms a little bit more above them. Even before I saw a Nightmare on Elm Street film, I thought the idea of Freddy Krueger was really scary. The idea of someone who could kill you in your dreams and who would taunt you. To me, he's still the most. Even though he can be a very funny character, an enjoyable character, he's still the one who. The idea of him is really terrifying. And I think A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original film, more so than the sequels, captures this whole claustrophobic idea of, not being able to sleep without risking being killed. And the Heather Longkamp character, Nancy, what's wonderful about her is that she really is the girl next door. That's sort of a cliche now, that expression, but she really does feel like just an average teenager, not supermodel gorgeous, but, cute and attractive and, a nice girl. And she's sort of thrown into this situation that sort of began with her parents and began with these other children's parents because they had killed Freddy Krueger, and this is really about the sins of the parents coming back to haunt the children, even though they had reason to kill Freddy Krueger because he was a child murderer. This is all about sort of how even if there's justification behind your actions, there's still consequences. And of course, this is more of a it takes a more supernatural, angle on whole, consequences. But the point still stands that the parents, while justified, while they had their reasons, now have brought hell down on their children. And this film, I mentioned Psycho just a little while before, and this film also does kind of what Psycho did when, spoiler warning for Psycho if you haven't seen it, but they established Janet Leigh as the main character, and then they kill her off less than an hour in the infamous shower scene. And this film also does something similar with the character of Christina, or Tina for short, played by Amanda Wyss. They sort of establish her early on as what may be the main character, even though Nancy is there early on in the film. The first person we really see in the film is Tina, and I feel like that sort of tells the audience, okay, this is your main character, and she's blonde, she's very attractive, she's more traditionally, beautiful than Heather Langenkamp, so we sort of assume Okay, that's our main character, but she's killed. She's actually, I believe, the first person really killed in the film. In probably the most terrifying sequence of the film, where she's being murdered in her dream, and she's being. You see her being cut up as she's flying around the room. The scarves come onto her chest because whatever happens to you in the dream happens to you in real life. So if you're getting stabbed, it happens in real life, and it's a horrifying sequence. And yeah, so once that happens, kind of like Psycho, it basically changes the game. Changes the game. It says the person you thought maybe was safe isn't, and now our main character is now going to be Nancy, and it really establishes the stakes. And again, it's a horrifying sequence. Uh, yeah, that tells you how powerful this Freddy Krueger guy is, and how we are crossing the line from how the line between dream and reality is, you know, being completely. It's not even being blurred. It's you die in your dream, you die in real life. And what Wes Craven does here is kind of what I think Christopher Nolan would kind of do about 20, yeah, about 26 years later when he did Inception, which was in Inception we had these kind of dream worlds that sort of looked very real. Um, and of course, that's a very different film than A Nightmare on Elm Street. But in A Nightmare on Elm Street, yeah, I keep saying the title over and over again. Wes Craven, Freddy Krueger, they create these dream worlds which at first seem very normal, but then weird things start popping in, like when Nancy is in school after Tina dies, and we see Tina's body in plastic, and then there's the girl in the hall who's like your hall pass, and she has the. We see this throughout the series where Freddy Krueger disguises himself, and we see his claw, and that's also a very unsettling sequence as well. And again, it establishes or showcases how Freddy Krueger, he's not just killing you in your dreams, but he's manipulating the dream world so that you don't know that you're in a dream, and he's putting you in a very vulnerable spot. Uh, and Freddy Krueger, this is sorry, Freddy Krueger and Robert Englund. This is one of those cases where an actor and a character just merge, and an actor just is that character. Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. I don't know if he can really have anyone else as that character and quite have the same impact. I haven't seen the remake. I heard Jackie Earle Haley was good, even though that film wasn't supposed to be that good. But I feel that Englund, he just kind of is Freddy Krueger. That's when we think of Freddy Krueger, we don't just think of the costume, but we think of that performance. And Robert Englund, he completely embodies that character, and you can tell, especially as the series goes along, he's completely committed to this character, and he has so much fun, being this kind of vile, funny, unsettling creature. And Pio said Freddy Krueger, the films got more comedic as they went along, and it's true. But I think Robert Englund made all that work. As goofy as it could be, he never felt like, oh, he's too over the top. He always knew the right way to play it. And in this film, it's less comedic. It's definitely the darkest. I think Krueger was in this original series. I mean, I guess he was in Freddy in the second film, but yeah. What's great about Freddy Krueger here is that over they don't overuse him. They know exactly when to use them. It's not like he's in your face all the time. In this film, they know they know when to keep him in shadows. They keep him in shadows a lot in this film, and it's more about the atmosphere. It's more about his presence being felt than actually always seeing him. There's that great part in the film where Nancy brings the hat out from the dream world, and just seeing the hat is just more effective than seeing Krueger himself. And yeah, Johnny Depp is also in this film, and this was back when I think this was before 21 Jump Street or around the same time. This is a very different Johnny Depp than what we think of now, where he wears all these goofy hats and mustaches, and he sort of stopped becoming an actor in a way, and sort of just he's kind of become more gimmicky as an actor. But this was back where before he was so self-conscious, and he was just an actor, starting out, and I like how he's the boyfriend in this. He's not the main character, He's not like Nancy is the girlfriend, of the main character. It's him who's her boyfriend. But it's not a thankless role. Him and Nancy, and his character Glenn. Yeah, Glenn and Nancy have a nice chemistry. They do care about one another, and it is sad when Glenn gets killed due to Nancy not being able to wake him, and him being swallowed by the bed is one of the great made the signature moment of this film. And then there's that line that comes after, we don't need a gurney, we need a mop, because, he's just been severed. And what's nice about this film is that you do feel the depths of the characters. It's not just, people die and people forget, like it does. This does weigh on Nancy, and she sort of has to. She's one of the great final girls in film history, because she really does stand up to Krueger at the end. And even though at the end it's implied that Krueger's still around, it's not like, oh, she just gets killed. It's implied that, okay, there is going to be a sort of ongoing conflict. It's kind of weird because, at the she's not in the sequel, but then she's in the third one, and we don't really know what kind of happened between the first and the third. Spoiler warning, they kill her off in the third. I don't like, I can understand, I'm okay if they do kill her off, but it just felt kind of cheap the way they did, how she gets tricked by Krueger. As people said, the Nancy from the original film wouldn't have been tricked. So yeah, more about Wes Craven. Visually, this is an extremely striking movie. It's inventive in terms of what it's doing in the dream sequences. As I said, with the bed sequence, with when Johnny Depp gets swallowed up, with the scene where Tina gets murdered, the stuff in the school. Wes Craven, he just creates this very particular kind of atmosphere right from the beginning, and he was one of those directors who I think completely understood horror. And I know they're going to be, as I said before, they're going to be doing another Nightmare on Elm Street reboot remake down the line, because the last one, I don't know how much money it made. I don't know if it bombed. I don't think it bombed, but the reviews weren't very good, and people didn't seem to like it. I haven't seen it yet. I know Rooney Mara was in it, from the girl with the dragon tattoo and the Social Network. I'm wondering what approach they're going to take to another reboot, because it feels like we've done so many sequels, and there was Freddy vs. Jason. There was even one. Yeah, I mentioned that before. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, where it takes place in the quote-unquote real world with Wes Craven and Heather Langenkamp as actual characters. So I don't know what they could do. I think if they're going to do another Nightmare on Elm Street, they have to start from the bottom up and find something really new, because you can't just do the same thing over again. Even if it's competently made and respectful to the spirit of the original film, it just feels like, just watch the original film. You don't have to see a new, updated version. Uh, but yeah, if they were going to do it again, reimagine the Freddy Krueger character, reimagine the mythos, create something visionary and unique. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but ideally, that's how you would approach it. Of course, make it darker. Don't go for the comedic route. Stay true to the darker edge of the original film. I think that's what they tried to do in the remake, from what I've seen in the trailers. And if they are going to cast someone as Freddy Krueger, don't get someone who's too big of a name. Like with Robert Englund, I don't think he was that well known when he started playing Freddy Krueger. And even to this day, he's not like this huge movie star. So, yeah, don't go for the name. Like with Jackie Earle Haley, go with a character type actor. Go with someone who can just disappear into the role and just be Freddy Krueger. But anyway, yeah, those are my kind of thoughts on A Nightmare on Elm Street, and rest in peace, Wes Craven. Uh, he really contributed a lot to the horror genre, and I think it's people like him that sort of, inspires people to make movies, not just horror movies, but just movies in general. And people like that don't always come along. They come along once in a while. So, thank you, Wes Craven, for A Nightmare on Elm Street, for the Scream films. Yeah, so that's all for now. Bye.